Blood Moon Chronicles Chapter 17 The First Victim. You know, when I say that portals to hell are the worst kind of workplace hazard, and yes, OSHA does have regulations about spontaneous root growth, but they're so freaking bureaucratic you'll die before they send someone out. Bubba arrives at the altar. Can we talk for a second about how many altars one guy can possibly need? I mean, Victor must have the best Home Depot card in 3 counties, because this is like his 5th ritual site this month, and I'm getting tired of cleaning up after him. Also, why does Sarah's blood have to hit the mosaic skin? Okay, I'm through ranting, now onto the story. The ground erupts, not with fire, but with roots, which honestly feels personal. Like nature is judging us for whatever bullshit Victor's got planned tonight. Ancient, gnarled roots bursting through concrete like God was trying to make a point about foundation repairs or some shit. The portal shudders, its edges fraying into a vortex of screaming faces, and I'm just standing there thinking, wow, Victor really went with the budget-friendly horror this time, didn't he? I mean, screaming faces in portals? That's like amateur hour. At least make them HD or something. Bubba tosses his cigar into the growing chasm. The ashes swirl, creating a barrier that sears the air, and Bubba's just sitting there with his feet up like he's at a bonfire, instead of potentially dooming us all to an eternity of being devoured by whatever's on the other side. Which, honestly, good for him. If I'm about to die in a supernatural catastrophe, I want a damn cigar too. The ground splits between Bubba and Sarah, classic relationship drama, but make it eldritch horror. He roars, "Let go," which is adorable because she's being dragged into a dimensional rift by sentient vegetation, and he thinks she's choosing to hold his hand? Please. Her fingers slip, that moment when gravity wins again, and the roots devour her with that satisfying crunching sound you get when nature reclaims what's hers. Sarah's last words are, "I'm sorry, I tried to warn you." And honestly, we all try to warn people about Victor and his schemes, but do they listen? No. They never freaking listen. Bubba just sits in the crater staring at his blackened hands like he's trying to figure out if he should wash them with soap or holy water first. Rhonda finds him later clutching Sarah's journal. Because of course there's a journal. There's always a freaking journal in these things. Always some prophetic nonsense that could have saved everyone if someone had just bothered to read it before now, instead of waiting until after the main character gets digested by plant matter. The last page reads, "The arch isn't a door, it's a prism." Yeah, no shit. I've been saying Victor's dimensional physics are shaky for weeks, but nobody listens when you're covered in what appears to be reanimated tar and complaining about the rent being due. We're being refracted into something else. Great. Just great. Can we at least get a discount on our next transformation? It's getting expensive maintaining multiple forms. Chapter 18. The Hollow Men. Sounds like something my boss would name a folder on the company shared drive before immediately forgetting what he put in it. Hollow Men. Probably contains tax forms from 2017, and pictures of his cat wearing tiny sunglasses. But I digress. We've got our survivors stumbling out into the town square, and instead of the neat little portal Victor promised them, which was already shaky physics-wise. But again, nobody listens when you're covered in tar complaining about dimensional stability. There's this pulsing black obelisk showing distorted faces of the main characters. Mike is at its base, grinning with his own teeth, and Bubba is cracking up until his ribs literally snap. Which, hey, that's a new one. Usually it's just internal bleeding from shock. So let me introduce our new character, Dave. Dave works in accounting at the same office as Mike before all this happened. He's the kind of guy who brings his lunch to work in a Tupperware container and meticulously logs every expense on an Excel spreadsheet that he color codes according to some system only he understands. He also has a weird fascination with ancient architecture, which is how he ended up helping Bubba and Rhonda figure out the obelisk's purpose after he wandered into their little apocalypse party. Dave squints at the pulsing black obelisk like it's an interesting new deduction in his tax software. "You know," Dave says, pushing up his glasses with one finger, while the rest of us are actively trying not to be refracted into something else by whatever eldritch horror is currently showing our faces on its surface. The geometric patterns here are reminiscent of pre-Roman Etruscan funerary architecture. Mike, who is currently using Mike's own teeth to grin at us, tilts his head. "Fascinating," he says in a voice that sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a well filled with broken glass. "Do you think they had tax deductions for portal-related expenses back then too?" Bubba stops laughing long enough to take another hit from his ever-present flask. "Man, I told you accounting was hell," he wheezes between breaths as his cracked ribs press against his lungs like shrapnel. Literally. Rhonda, whose infected leg is currently doing that horrifying pulsating thing where it looks like a second heart is trying to escape through her skin, limps closer to Dave and the obelisk. "Can we focus on not being turned into whatever these things are?" she hisses, gesturing vaguely at the distorted faces flickering across the black surface. Dave, who has been taking notes in a small notebook he pulled from his back pocket while standing near what is essentially a dimensional blender that's showing our own reflections as monsters, nods thoughtfully. "The arch isn't just a door," he reads aloud from his notebook, not looking at any of us. "It's a prism." He looks up suddenly, his glasses slipping down his nose. "That's it. That's the key." We all stare at him in that way you stare at someone who has just found profound meaning in a disaster they walked into by accident while trying to file their 1099 forms. "The obelisk isn't a destination," Dave continues, pacing around the base now. "It's an amplifier. It's taking our essence and refracting it across multiple dimensions simultaneously." He points at Mike. "That's why you're seeing yourself as something else. You're experiencing parallel versions of yourself." Mike's grin widens impossibly. "I'm a multiverse," he says, and somehow his voice comes from everywhere at once now, echoing in our skulls like we've been plugged into the mainframe of his insanity. "Or you could just not be a monster anymore," Rhonda suggests weakly, as her leg pulses again, spraying black ichor across Dave's carefully pressed slacks. "Sorry," she mumbles. Dave doesn't seem to notice the blood on his pants. He's too busy having an architectural epiphany in the middle of our potential doom. "We need to disrupt the amplification," he exclaims, running around the obelisk and looking for something that isn't there. "If we can create a resonance frequency that interferes with the dimensional refraction, we might be able to stabilize the portal or close it entirely." Bubba takes another swig from his flask. "You're gonna sing at it, Dave." "No, I need something metallic." Dave frantically pats down his pockets and pulls out a silver letter opener he must have stolen from the office supply closet before all this started. "This should work as a resonator." Before anyone can stop him, which is a common theme in our little group honestly, Dave leaps onto the base of the obelisk and starts tapping his letter opener against its surface while humming something that sounds suspiciously like an old sea shanty he learned at company picnic. The effect is immediate. The pulsing black surface flickers violently, and for a moment we see glimpses of not just our own distorted faces, but what look like entire alternate realities. Bubba as a successful stand-up comedian, Rhonda as a respected scientist, Mike as, well, still kind of a mess, but at least not a monster. And then the obelisk lets out a sound that isn't quite sound, a vibration that goes straight to your teeth and makes them ache with the memory of all the things you've lost. Dave stops humming and staring up at the visions above him. "It's working," he whispers, his eyes wide behind his glasses. "I can feel it resonating through." The obelisk shudders violently, and one of the tendrils of black energy that has been lashing out from its surface suddenly wraps around Dave's waist like a hungry serpent made of pure darkness. "Dave?" Rhonda asks, her voice barely audible over the humming vibration. Dave looks down at his waist where he's being held by nothing visible but is clearly being lifted off the ground. "That wasn't supposed to happen," he says conversationally, as if he's just had a minor inconvenience like missing his bus rather than being absorbed by interdimensional horror. "The resonance frequency should have—" His sentence cuts off as the darkness completely engulfs him from the waist up. For a moment we see Dave's own face flicker across the obelisk's surface among all the others, a brief panicked expression of realization that he's about to become something else entirely before his features blur and twist into yet another distorted monster face. The darkness recedes, leaving behind only the letter opener which clatters harmlessly to the ground at the base of the obelisk. Dave is gone. Well, not completely gone. His face now joins the chorus of others flickering across the black surface, but he's no longer in his accounting clothes. He's wearing what looks like ceremonial robes made from living shadows, and his eyes are empty voids that seem to look directly at each of us personally. Bubba stops laughing for real this time. "Well," he says after a long moment of silence broken only by the humming of the obelisk and Rhonda's leg pulsating in rhythm with it somehow, "that was unexpected." Mike, still grinning with his own teeth at the base of the obelisk where Dave just disappeared, nods thoughtfully. "He'll make an excellent addition to the collection," he says, and for a second we're all pretty sure he's talking about Dave joining whatever hellish realm this is before we realize he means Dave's face has been added to the display. Rhonda limps over and picks up the discarded letter opener. She examines it for a moment, then looks at us with an expression that's somehow both resigned and determined. Which, I've learned from working in customer service for 7 years, is basically the default expression of anyone who hasn't completely broken under pressure yet, but knows they probably should have by now. "So," she says, pocketing the letter opener, "we going to try to close this thing or just stand here admiring our new reflection?" Bubba takes one last swig from his flask and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. "Let's go see what other architectural wonders Victor has left lying around," he says, and we all trudge off into whatever fresh hell awaits us next, leaving Dave to his eternal position as part of the decor on an interdimensional obelisk that probably doesn't even offer a tax deduction for its victims. Please stay tuned for the next installment of Moon Chronicles. Oh, by the way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you soon, my friends.